Hello, and welcome to the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast, where we empower you with financial literacy and guide you on your journey to financial freedom. I'm Josh Metal, and I'm here today with my dear friends, serial entrepreneurs, and decade-long real estate investors, Jeff and Lynn Marchant. The Marchants and I go way back. They've been friends and mentors for me for nearly 20 years, and it's been exciting to watch them grow their businesses and their real estate empire. Today, Jeff and Lynn run a thriving EXP Realty team, as well as own and manage over 40 single-family rental properties in Salt Lake City. So today we're going to discuss how they got started as entrepreneurs and their real estate investments, lessons learned throughout their careers that they've implemented so well and honestly taught me so darn much. So Jeff and Lynn, welcome to the show. Total honor to have you here.
Awesome, Josh. The honor's ours. We really appreciate the invite.
We are so excited to be here.
Game on. And I remember, going back, I want to have you share where this all began, this real estate investment journey began for you. But I remember when I was getting started in real estate, you really helped me and my mom with this concept around buying houses, renovating them, and then refinancing and rinse and repeat. And that was one of the fundamental things, as I think back, that got us going. And then we sold a few of those and 1031 exchanged them and then bought an 8-plex and, just kind of went on for there. So first of all, thank you. And I'm super grateful for our introduction all those years ago. But let's start back on how you got into real estate and what was it like, a little bit as a kid, and how did you get into, was Marchant Real Estate your first entrepreneurial business?
Landscaping.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Before we get into that, because we got to go back, because when we got started, it was when we got started, right? Yeah. As a couple. So we're going on our 31st anniversary next month.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
Isn't that crazy?
That is epic.
So I've got to go a little, I've got to go a little informal for a minute, because we're pretty informal and transparent, but we're comfortable after 30 years, right? We might overtalk each other a little bit. We might have a different perspective on some of your questions. And you know what I was thinking this morning? Sorry to go off on a tangent. I'll get to your question in a second.
You're good.
But what would have been a great concept for this relationship and this podcast was to have done it twice. We should have ripped through this, you and I give my version of the answer of events on how things transpired and my take on it. You do the exact same podcast and interview the same questions with her. And maybe we'll do this in the future, right? Because it's interesting when two people are on the same journey, they do have different perspectives. Remember the movie 24 with Kiefer Sutherland? The entire season was a 24-hour period. And they always had those split screens, and they were showing what this person was doing, what the terrorist was doing, they're on the same storyline, but they have different roles in the story. And that's how our life has been. So we'll see how this goes. We've never done this before, but we're going to have hopefully some interesting content for you.
That's a really interesting opening. I was just having a coaching call with one of my loan officers yesterday, and we were having this conversation around don't believe everything you think, because your perception of what that reality is through your emotional lens or focus or perspective. But your wife's interpretation of that exact same, in other words, if I experienced an event and my wife experienced an event and you were standing as a third party, there would be 3 different experiences of that event. And that's I think that's a humbling concept that maybe, we could just kick off and start with, is that, our perception of a particular event is just that. It's our perception. And to the extent that we can pause and go, I'd say pause and get curious. Is that the only reality? Is it possible that there's another way? And
not many people have the opportunity to reflect that way because maybe they don't have this dynamic. Do you remember a couple of years ago when I was writing a lot, right?
Yes.
I was writing stories of life events that actually had a life message. Right?
Yep.
She would read it. She was kind of like, hey, read this. I'm going to post this story. And she'd say, that's not what happened. or she would add in a whole slew of additional commentary to what happened from her view. And I was like, wow, how cool would that be? Along with the premise of what I just talked about, a dual podcast, how cool would that be if I wrote my event and she wrote her event chapter for chapter, so people could, I mean, it's marriage, right? It's partnership, it's just relationships. And we have to allow ourselves to have our own memories
Yes.
of what transpired based off of the role we played in that event. So,
And we have to be humble enough to accept the fact that maybe we're wrong. Maybe that's not the only version of the truth. And I think that's very important. And I think there's two takeaways here. First takeaway is, after 31 years of marriage, you still have awesome biceps. So that's the first takeaway that I have here. That shirt, you're rocking that shirt. All right, that's takeaway number one. Takeaway number two. Yeah, right. Takeaway number two is that, and people might be thinking like, where the hell are we? We're supposed to be on the Infinite Financial Freedom podcast. But listen, we're about to dive into real estate. We're about to dive into inflation. We're about to dive into some things that may be foreign to you or don't land or register. I think the reason why this is an important preview is that don't believe everything you think. What you've done, what you believe in so far has gotten you to where you are today. If you want to get somewhere else, you need to get curious about maybe looking at another perspective or believing something else. Just realize that there's more than one way to do it. The conversation I'm having with my mom, who's my investment partner right now, is that managers of investment properties are thieves and they cannot be trusted. And therefore, we can only buy properties in Salt Lake County, and they can only be managed by us or we will be robbed. And I go, do you think Donald Trump manages his properties?
we've had that same discussion.
So let's just take this entry as be open, be curious. Is it possible there's another way to get to financial freedom or to get to happiness or to get forward wherever you want to get on your journey?
And just let me just put an exclamation on that as a takeaway to make it simple for people to understand that concept. And it's simply the phrase, you don't know what you don't know.
Amen.
And when we stay humble and open, instead of egotistical and feel like God, I'm so smart, look what we've done, that's where you get in trouble. So I use that phrase a lot with my team, with my kids. You don't know what you don't know. You're making judgments and decisions based off of limited information. There might be some more information. You might want to talk to some more people before you make that decision so that you're knowing what you're saying no to when you say yes.
By the way, do you know the last time that I felt just how you just talked about, oh man, I'm so great, I know everything? 2008. That was the last time I remember literally walking into a party or being in some social event. And I remember thinking that I was the most successful person in the room. And literally God heard me and just smacked me right on the rear end. And I've been trying to make up for that since then.
Yeah, big old bitch slap.
Totally bitch slap. Yeah, totally. All right. So let's go back. I want to hear a little bit about the story of how you became an entrepreneur and then started towards the real estate game. And at some point, I believe there was an aha moment. Like, oh, if we buy a property and make cash flow, and then in a certain number of years, we'll be free. So I'd like to hear that evolution.
Okay, I'll let Lynn start with this one because she's got a little bit better background. I'm more of the aha moment guy. She was born this way.
So it didn't matter, when I was 3 years old, didn't matter what there was always something great to sell. So it didn't matter if it was, weeds out of the field that was across from our house or whatever. I was always trying to sell it. So I always thought there was opportunity. I always been excited about life. But when I really realized that real estate was my passion, or that real estate was the way to go, was, how we all love to play Monopoly when we were young, right? We loved to play Monopoly. We could play it for hours. Well, I guess I was a little more competitive than other people. I loved to play it for hours and hours at a time. Well, I got the concept of real estate at that point. And then I watched my parents buy some rentals. I watched them, go in and remodel them, put renters in, and enjoy the fruits of their efforts. And then my father decided he wanted to move us to North Idaho. So he said, you know what, we're going to go remodel the house, and we're going to sell all of our real estate in Spokane, which is where we were. And we're going to just enjoy life and not have all of that real estate anymore. So what I saw, I was about 8 years old, was my parents kept talking about the real estate they sold.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept saying, if we would have still held that real estate is worth this now. Oh my gosh, we would be multimillionaires if we still had those duplexes and those houses. And you know what? My parents couldn't even afford to buy me new clothes for school. That was the aha. If you held the properties long term, they actually go up in value and they produce income. And I'm like in 4th grade and I'm listening to this. So anyway, I knew real estate was a good way to get ahead in life.
Yeah, so that was impactful for her. So when she talks about this all the time, on our first date, we talked about real estate. We talked about possibilities. We talked about being in charge of our own future, right? I was blessed at a young age to feel in charge of designing my future instead of entitled. And well, let's just see what happens, right? So one of those aha moments you're talking about was really early in our relationship when we bought our first rental property. We didn't have enough money to qualify for a loan. We didn't have credit. We're just young 21-year-old kids. And we did a seller finance deal with a broker. Okay. This is like 1991, 92. We took over a mortgage that had already been amortized out 13 years. So it only had 17 years left on it. So when I realized that I just paid for my daughter's college, I have a brand new baby girl, and this 4-bedroom, 3-bath townhome down by the university campus is going to be paid off free and clear when she graduates from high school. That was a very, probably one of my first aha moments, that it's like, I can design my retirement. I can design the financial stability and security that I want later by doing small little things right now. Because literally all we had to do was not a lot more work, right? We had already acquired the property. Now we just have to keep it rented and keep it maintained.
I want to go back to something you said. You said that from a young age, you felt that you were in charge of your future. And what I heard there is that you had an awareness that you had agency or cause over where you ended up. Where did that come from?
I have a real aversion to complainers. And those that are constantly bitching about their circumstances and not taking action to correct them, I have no patience. I just can't relate. And so it's like, why are you spending all of this time talking about what's not working or what's outside circumstances are influencing your environment and you're not taking any proactive action? So I think from being so disgusted with that type of conversation, and I had plenty of my people in my life that talked like that, that wasn't going to be me.
We've been doing a lot of talking about the 15 conscious commitments, and I'll share that document, a link to it. But the viewpoint of this document is life happening to you or by you, right? Are you a victim or are you at cause? And I think it's an important distinction when it comes to entrepreneurs, investors, that we have this fundamental belief that life is happening by us, not to us. We have agency over creating change in our future. And like you had that moment where you said, that property equals my ability to pay for college for my daughter. I can make a conscious decision now that has agency or cause over my future. And I think that's an important starting place, because I don't think everybody has that. I think there are people that are listening to this podcast that might feel like the world is this scary place that they don't have agency over. And I think that's probably starting block number one for investment or entrepreneurialism.
You know, and that's something I'd like to add on to, is that from the moment we met, we would talk about how excited we were about creating our future. We would always say, it is up to us. Whatever we do right now is going to create what we have later, or when we can retire, or the lifestyle for our family. But it was always about the world is wide open to us. We're 21 years old.
Yeah.
And that is why we connected so well, because we both felt that way. Even today, in our 50s, we talk on a daily basis about how we can be better. Life is not happening to us. We're happening to life. We are growing. We're changing lives.
Well, I'll put that on a bumper sticker. Whoa.
No doubt. No doubt. I love it. Well, there's a lot more we could go into that, and maybe that's a whole episode of another podcast, but I do want to get into a little bit, so you started with Marchant Landscaping. I believe that was your first business. And then at some point you pivoted into real estate. So just walk us through that journey, because I remember 20 years ago, I think, when you and I were becoming friends, and I was helping you with loans at the time, Lynn was working. I think I recall trading emails with her at 3 o'clock in the morning at one point, and she was working, all day in the Marchant real estate business, and then all night in the New Start Properties business. And walk us through that journey a little bit.
Okay, that's one of those examples that her explanation is going to be way different than mine. See, I'm out there, she mentioned playing Monopoly. I'm out there playing Monopoly. I'm the one out there doing, 3-4 deals at a time with a couple of crews doing the remodels. And when are you going to get your next one? Because they're almost done remodeling this. I got to get something under contract. And she's holding down the nest, right? So to back up a little bit, we started everything, like I mentioned before, when we started. So I was working for a sod farm, saw an opportunity when people would come in with a car that needed 100 pieces of turf, of sod. That's going to take them 12 trips back and forth all day. So I saw an opportunity. It's like, hey, I'll borrow a truck, right? I'll deliver this to you when I get off work for a fee. And it turned out that was a pretty good business. From customers that came in that were saying, oh no, I'll have to get somebody else to pick this up for me. I was able to work something out with that sod farm to allow me to keep that customer and sell their turf instead of somebody else's. And I would make more on my way home from work by dropping off small deliveries for people than I made all day at my hourly wage. So I kept my job and I hired somebody else to drive the truck.
I love it. Leverage.
So that turned into a landscaping business. The landscaping is how we paid our bills, right? But the passion for the real estate and what we had already done with one deal, we only made money to pay our bills and to shovel it into real estate. That was our goal, to make it work for us. We were always contemplating, and I don't know, it's probably Brian Tracy or somebody like that, and listening to motivational and personal development people back then, always be thinking, what else can you be doing with this money? As you're making a decision to spend it or invest it, what else could you do? Because once you do certain expenditures or whatever, it's gone. It's not working for you anymore.
And I want to break into that a little bit, because as we were taking all of the money that we were earning and putting into real estate, we are watching our friends buy fancy cars and buy toys and go on vacations and buy clothes at the mall for their children. That's a lot of money. We weren't doing all those things. We were saving. I was cutting coupons. I was saving money with on finance, and we were putting it all towards buying real estate. I mean, how many people think that way at 20 years old?
No, I am blessed to have suffered from the same disease, and in looking in the rear view mirror, it pays off in spades and spades and spades. But I want to go back and just connect a couple of dots. I'm reading a book right now by Barry Habib called Money in the Streets. And really what he's saying in that book, it's a great book, by the way, Jeff. Both of you would really dig it.
I'm writing down the title right now.
What he's really saying in that, and that was actually something that his parents told him. And then when he became a young adult, he realized, oh, the money in the street is the opportunity to solve a problem for somebody. And so if we're aware and we're looking around and we're going, this person's going to try and take in a Toyota Corolla, the sod, that's a problem. That's uncomfortable. How do I solve that? How do I find a solution to that? That's money in the street right there. It's just a problem that needed to be solved. and then you monetized it, you made money out of it. And then instead of blowing it, you decided, all right, we're going to save it and we're going to invest it and we're going to buy that property that pays for my daughter's college 20 or 30 years down the road. So there's a lot of brilliance in there. I just want to pause and pull out those strings because, alternatively, you could have said, this job sucks. They make a lot of money. I don't. The world's unfair.
Yep.
Oh my goodness.
And a lot of people say that, right? But when you make one decision, it usually leads to other opportunities and other options, right? So I hate to spend a lot of time on the landscaping theory, but it's more of the entrepreneurial concept that we've been talking about. Is what happened next is I was delivering sod to somebody's house and I'm unloading it out of the truck. And I'm like, where are you going to lay this sod? And they're like, right here. And it's all lumpy and there's rocks and there's weeds and everything. And I'm like, you're going to lay brand new grass over that? So then it turned into, for X amount of dollars, I will grade and smooth out this area and lay this sod for you. That turned into bigger areas that needed to be done and buying loaders and another truck. And it turned into an installation business, right? Which helped us with the real estate. And so I wouldn't have gotten to the level of revenue we were creating in landscaping if I hadn't have done the first thing and just said, oh, I'll take that to you. I'll deliver that to you on my way home from work.
Yeah, it's, Steve Jobs talks about that you can only connect the dots looking in the rearview mirror. Mm-hmm. And that he would never have gotten to that level of success or the iPhone if he wouldn't have made all the little choices in between. Mm-hmm. So it's being aware, it's finding the money in the street, it's taking that opportunity and then leveraging it and looking for the next opportunity. Okay, that works. Now I can get that guy to drive the truck to deliver the sod. Now I need to fix the place where the sod's going to go. Now I got that figured out. Now I can get somebody to do that. Where's the next problem? Boom. And it grows. And before you know it, you're a full-blown entrepreneur on the Infinite Financial Freedom podcast.
I love that. I love that. And while we're talking about this time in our life, I hope you don't mind. I mean, I know you got other questions and things you want to delve into.
Roll.
But another thing that really was one of those aha things for us was when we infused passion and purpose into what we were doing. And you know me, we've known each other for a long time, so you know part of my background and my story. But when I say we started life fast, we started life fast. We met in October, we got married in May. 2 months later, we were pregnant, had our first child on our 11th anniversary, or 11 months after we got married, right? A month before our anniversary. And then we bought that property. And then we're like, okay, well, if we can buy one, we can buy one a year. And we did that. And then my dad passed away. Mm-hmm. He was only 49 years old. And I saw where he was in his life and the decisions he had made and what he didn't leave as security for my mom. My youngest sister was 15 years old at the time. And I also learned that his dad passed away at 51 and his grandfather passed away at 53, all from instant heart attacks. And so me and my brothers were like, wow, one of us could have an expiration date of 47. It's getting 2 years sooner every generation. And I'm starting a family and we planned on having more kids. And I'm envisioning Lynn being a single mom and trying to raise kids. So if that doesn't give you purpose to create financial security and stability for your family, if you're gone, nothing will.
Amen.
Nothing will. So that was another one of those moments, infusing with what we already had as a mindset that made it so we couldn't fail.
Yeah. Well, it kind of galvanized that conviction and reinforced this is the path, go faster. Here we go. So based on that story, then my understanding is that the real estate investing business has been going on for about 30 years.
Mm-hmm, correct.
Is that right? Okay. So that's quite a span of lessons learned in the rear view mirror. Looking back at that, what could you have not known? Or what surprised you, and what would you share with somebody who's, maybe they're buying their first house, maybe they have a house and are buying another home, and they're contemplating, should I sell this home, or should I turn it into a rental property? Like what are the lessons that you pulled out of those 30 years that somebody contemplating becoming a real estate investor might want to know?
Well, again, like you just mentioned, Steve Jobs, you can connect the dots when you look back. So looking back on a 30-year investing career, I can quite comfortably state, if you're investing long-term, there are no bad deals in real estate.
Amen.
Okay, there are no bad deals, and people analyze this little pinpoint period of time and make their decisions based on the way things are today, without taking into account the compounding effect of that decision, dragging that into the future. And so another thing looking back is on all the deals I didn't do.
Oh, right.
Right. I mean, I think that's the biggest regret for a real estate entrepreneur is I should have bought more, and I was too cautious. In fact, a friend of yours, Mike, was telling a story when we were chatting one time about him going under contract to buy a house in 2008. And by the time he closed on it, he was $75,000 underwater. And I love the way he was talking about that, because he says, you know what? I signed up for this loan. I qualified for this loan. I can afford the payment, the equity position. This is where my family's going to live. And he moved forward with it anyway, when a lot of people backed out and ran, right? And now today he's enjoyed raising his family there. It's worth way more than it was in 2008.
More than doubled.
Corrected the entry point, right?
Yeah, let me add another story to that. So I think this was the first real estate property my mom and I bought, and we started out thinking we were going to be flippers, which we're the worst. If you want to know when the market's about to pivot, just find out when I'm going to buy a property to flip. That's when the market's going to shift. And we paid, I think it was like $83,000 for this condo in Sugar House. And the market was shifting. And by the time we finished renovating it, of course, we thought we were going to pay $7,500 for a renovation. That cost $18,000. And then by the time we finished the renovation, which took 6 months instead of 3 months, so it's twice as expensive and takes twice as long. That's just the rule. We went to sell it. We were in this thing roughly $100,000. And when we went to list it for sale, there had been 3 bank-owned properties that had sold in the high 60 range, right around 70. I think they were between 67 and 73. And
sorry, I probably bought those.
You probably did. Thanks. Well, actually, I have a great debt of gratitude for you, because let me tell you what it looks like today. That property that was 25% underwater, that we were just beating ourselves up for. I mean, it almost ended our real estate investment career, but we refinanced off the appraised value. We got a decent loan. We put a tenant in there. We barely broke even. Today, that property would sell for $350,000. It's been free and clear for years, and we rent it out for $1,400 a month. And so the point is, time cures all in real estate. If you can hold on, time cures all. And I don't remember a single property I purchased that I didn't think I was paying too much for at the time.
Absolutely. Can I give a couple more examples on that?
Please, yeah, run with it.
And it's because we look back, right? Most people look back and said, I wish I would have. I should have done it then. What they don't realize is in 5 years, they're going to look back on today and say the same thing. I know people personally in my life that have been having this conversation with me for 2 decades. And they haven't done anything yet. Okay. So here's an example. We've talked about this before. Take yourself back in time. And I was having a conversation with my mom. Okay. And I said, Mom, and we're talking about her house, and she's going to die there. She's never leaving. She's entrenched in the neighborhood and she just loves it. But she paid $27,000 for that house. And I said, Mom, imagine, I think she was probably 22, 23 years old when they bought that house. Imagine if somebody had told you, do you know what? Someday this house is going to be worth $100,000. She wouldn't have believed them. Think of that. In 1969, with what she knew from the past, and buying at that time for $27,000, to even imagine that it would be worth $100,000 someday would not have been fathomable. And so here I am talking to her about it now, right? And she said, wow, it's probably worth $200,000 now, huh? And I said, try over 4, Mom. And she did boom, right? You can't fathom the future in the present.
That's right.
See, that's that lesson that I learned when I was a young girl watching what happened with my parents.
Yep.
And that is what we're hoping to teach people about real estate, is that now is the time to start. You know, it's never too late. And if you're 21 years old or you're 22 years old, you're not too young, because look what we've done.
Well, you know, I was very fortunate with that too. And that's a great point, Lynn. You know, my mom and I growing up were, you know, underprivileged. We fought for every last box of mac and cheese and hard-boiled eggs we could find. And, but my grandparents, who had come out of the Great Depression, had started a landscaping business and then leveraged that into an apartment building and eventually buying real estate. And I watched how they had turned, you know, a little bit of extra money invested in real estate over a long period of time into a lot of money. And that same realization, you know, it's really important for people to understand the difference between an appreciating asset and a depreciating asset, right? So if we live below our means and we buy an appreciating asset, when our kids go to college, it's going to be worth infinitely more. The rents that we yield off, it's going to be worth more. If we buy a depreciating asset, let's say we buy a Sprinter van, you know, a camping van, an expensive camping van. When our kids go to school, it'll be worth zero. So you have to think through the difference of where do we put our dollars? We earn money in dollars. Do we then put them into depreciating or appreciating assets? And then think forward, how does that play out for you over the next 20 or 30 years? And that's the difference between having an infinitely free retirement and lifestyle or a entrenched and trapped and chained lifestyle. Anything you'd add there?
I like to talk about delayed gratification a little bit.
Yeah.
Because as you're talking, I'm thinking of how many credit reports I've looked at, how many bank statements I've looked at as a landlord, and how much fast food people buy.
Oh, man.
I see people that spend their entire paycheck on fast food. And that is for instant gratification. It's not for that delayed gratification. So to me, everything we're talking about is delayed gratification. Take your money and put it where it's going to actually grow for you instead of spending on something that gives you instant gratification. And that was, we have always said, we were the masters at delayed gratification. We always knew that putting our money in real estate, yes, you know, you're talking about rents. A lot of those properties that we bought barely cash flowed. We were lucky if some of them even cash flowed at all. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of them are cash flowing $800 a month.
Yep.
Just by holding back those properties with the same mortgage payments that we've had over those years.
The struggle in real estate that I see is that it is not only do you have to have delayed gratification, like you're saying, and then there's one other point I wanted to make. You know, I think it was a Kiyosaki book that I read where he referred to money as soldiers, like your employees. And he said, you know, you can either kill those soldiers, spend your money, or you can put those soldiers to work for you. And at first it starts slow. It's just a trickle. You put a couple soldiers to work and it almost doesn't, you can't even feel it, right? It's the $50 cash flow that you got from your property. And then 5 years later, you refinance to a lower interest rate and all of a sudden it's $300, but still it's $300. I mean, it's not life-changing. And you're like, man, I've been at this for 5 years. Do you know how much work I put into this? And then 20 years later, you go, oh, it's free and clear. It's an unbelievable amount of cash flow now. Now my soldiers are creating more soldiers because there's so much money sitting in those accounts that now I can use that for the down payment on the next one. And it's like you've broken through gravity and now your soldiers are out earning you and are working for you. And that's a long, long journey to get through that gravity line. And I think most people stop before that, Lynn.
But you know what makes it easier is if people read those books. If people listen to somebody that has already done it, already gone through, and I read a lot of books when I was young. We didn't have the internet. I'm old. So I would go to the bookstore though, and I would read the jacket covers. I wasn't interested in the book written by the professor, right? I was interested in the book that somebody had written out their 20, 30-year life lessons, mistakes made, good decisions, good systems that they put in place that I could learn from. And I could get all of that for $20. It just blew me away.
Yeah.
And so I bought a lot of books. And so I learned a couple things there is this guy had done it. He's talking about perseverance. He's talking about stay the path. He's talking about don't give up. It'll be worth it someday. I can now predict the future.
Yeah.
If I do what I'm just on a different time scale. I'm getting started. He's now sharing his wisdom, right? So when I look at money like that and what I did at that age, it wasn't necessarily, I mean, people pick a metaphor, whatever you want, guys. Pick a metaphor that works for you. Because for me, it was like a preservation of money. Mm-hmm. If I wanted $1 million at retirement, and I listened to Dave Ramsey or somebody else that said, if you invest X amount of percent out of your paycheck, in 40 years, it'll compound and it'll be worth $3.2 million. Well, you got to be smart enough to realize if you're looking at futuristic dollars 40 years from now, $3.2 million might not be a lot of money.
That's right.
But with real estate, my value is preserved and protected, and I got to hedge against that inflation. And so if I buy $1 million worth of real estate in 1990, it's not going to be worth $1 million when I want to retire. It's going to be worth the equivalent of that spending value of that dollar back when I purchased it.
I want to take that thought a little bit further. And I agree with everything you just said. When I think about the difference, because I have some money in a little bit of money in Bitcoin, I have a little bit of money in stocks, I have a little bit of money in private money notes, I have a lot of money in real estate, mostly because that money is now making more money, right? We've escaped gravity zone. And when I think about all those different asset classes, what I think about with real estate versus stocks is if I were to fast forward the stock game over 30 or 40 years, I would build up a nest egg and then I would retire. Let's say I quit working and my revenue stream goes down. And then I start to spend that stock money. And the game becomes, dear Lord, please let me die before I spend all the money. Right? I mean, it's kind of like a finite, once the money's gone, I hope I'm not still here on planet Earth because that's going to suck. Right? I mean, and maybe you have so much money there that money now is in a bond portfolio and it's turning around cash flow. But how's your bond portfolio doing right now if you're not in junk bonds? Right? So that's the finite, the way I envision it, investing platform. And it's not that I don't have some money there. I do. The real estate game is a different game to me. And I think this is important for us to bifurcate. The value of the property that has gone up over the last 20 years is honestly irrelevant to me. What is because I don't think I'm ever going to sell that property. That's Xander's, that's Aria's. That I don't even think that belongs to me. But what does belong to me is the cash flow. And the cash flow has gone up so much over that period of time that once those mortgages are gone, I have an infinite amount of time that I can enjoy that cash flow. And I guess we could also, another thing, I was just interviewing Jason Hartman, and he was talking about, cash flow sucks because you have to pay taxes on cash flow. So what you actually should be doing is refinancing and pulling out cash that is tax-free, and then using that money to live on or to invest, because then you're not paying income. So either way you look at it, I look at it like an infinite game or a finite game. How do you look at it?
Kind of the same way. When we're talking about education and learning from people that have gone before us or whatever, there's a lot of investors that really are a proponent of that fix and flip, right? Why would you take $200 a month cash flow when you can take $20,000? Well, it depends on what your goals are, right? So if I read or studied that investor that says this is the way to do it, I would have created a job.
Yeah.
I got to now go flip another property after the other one. It's a transactional based focus, right? Much like a day trader in the stock market versus a Warren Buffett that hardly ever sells anything. He buys it and holds it. So looking at Okay, Lynn mentioned it before, and let's go back to delayed gratification. $20,000 to some people right now would change their life. So it doesn't mean you can't do both. You can marry these things, right? You can flip a property to create capital. But if your objective is to have a secure financial future, you've got to hold.
Yeah. Yeah. Really well said. And Lynn, anything you'd add to that?
Well, I'm thinking of our conversation here, and one of the things that you said, you were talking about real estate and how it's your children's, and that the income is yours. So that brings me to passion. That brings me to what is driving us. What is driving you to do what you're doing? That is the other component I would say here. Find your why. My why is legacy, and I could go into why that. It goes back to what happened with you and your mother, because I had to say I saw the same situation with my family. My why is legacy. For Jeff, he was concerned that he might leave us at 47 years old. So his why was, I've got to do this for my family so I can change their lifestyle. So if I'm not here, they can still live a nice lifestyle. So that would be my other component that I would bring into the mix, and talk and listening to both of you speak, is that find your why, because that passion, whether it's helping other people, which is a big one for us, your legacy, that will help you figure out what you're going to do to create.
You know, I want to add to that, because people make decisions in their life and they think they have to stick with it forever because they made that decision once. People need to give themselves permission to reevaluate previous decisions and see if it still serves them, right? Amen. So my landscape business was a great business. When we chose to walk away from that and focus on real estate full-time, part of that discussion was we want to do something that matters. You know, building rock boulder retaining walls and installing sod, and that doesn't matter. It was a means to an end. But when we decided to focus more on real estate full time, it was that legacy. It's like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist and I'm not a doom and gloom thinker, but I do worry about the future and what opportunities or lack of opportunities my kids are going to have. And if I can play a role in their security without their participation, because I'm their parent, and I'm going to sacrifice some personal pleasures so that they have options, if in a normal world those options are taken away, then that's what Lynn's talking about. You know, doing something that has purpose, passion, it matters, and in the end, it's your legacy, right?
Wow, I love that you went back to this passion part of the conversation, because I'm 100% certain, as I'm trying to, kind of put the puzzle pieces together as I look back, and I think we're saying the same thing, that, we were graced by having somebody who had a model. We saw somebody do it in real estate. We saw the appreciation. We listened to the conversations as a kid around, imagine if we still had that. And then somehow passion, something that was a core conviction to us, our why, inspired us to take action. And when those things go together, boom. And it's the same thing for me. Watching grandpa, watching grandma, saw the how. Oh, okay, that's how you do it. Listening to Robert Kiyosaki's books. Okay, cash flow quadrant, got it. Self-employed cash flow. Okay, that's the recipe. And then having the impetus or the push, the passion from not wanting to repeat the same financial hardships that I have as a kid for my kid. That was really my passion, Lynn, my legacy. My why was, man, it's on me. And I don't want my kids to have to go through that same experience. Now, interestingly enough, speaking about, don't believe everything you think, now I want my kids to go through that.
Oh, I hear you there.
Now I'm like, man, let's just, move into a 400 square foot apartment for a couple months and let's go back to the ground level and get these kids grounded.
That's where the lessons are learned, right?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, listen, you two have one of the most beautiful families of all time. I love watching your pictures, and young adult children now, three grandbabies. So you're living through watching the younger generation make financial decisions and come to age. And so if we're speaking to them, and you're watching, maybe not even them, but their friends and their generation, what are the mistakes that you're aware of that generation may be making, or what other advice would you give them?
Well, I think this generation gets picked on a lot because they're bombarded with more distractions than we ever were.
Amen.
Right. And so it's harder to make their way through the noise. And so what I would say to them kind of applies to everybody. I guess we're kind of creating a couple themes in this conversation, but one of them is that delayed gratification. People today want it too fast. It's instantaneous. I mean, it's a 15-second TikTok and then 2 hours are gone. It's like, I want it fast. I want it now. And so when it doesn't happen fast, they give up.
Yeah.
It didn't. Oh, that didn't work. That didn't work. That didn't work. And then they stop trying anything. I mean, Gary Vee says it a lot, right? If I were to bet, I bet one of the most used words he uses is patience.
Yeah.
People ask him questions and he's like, dude, you're 22 years old. Give it a minute. Give it a minute, right? So when they want it too fast, that brings, they're opening the door for disappointment.
Yes.
Right. And so that means they're not willing to sacrifice. Lynn and I sacrificed, the trips, the toys, the vacations for a better purpose. I mean, we can do a lot of things right now that may not be an option, but we would have some memories, right? I would rather end well than peter out and start well and never create those opportunities for myself, right? And so passion, purpose, if you have those things, it helps you get through a lot, right?
I think we need to paint a little picture too, is that, Jeff worked in 7-Eleven for a while, and I used to clean a meat department in a grocery store. Those are some of our jobs.
Yep.
Did we work just one job? No, I worked 2 jobs when I was going to school. I worked at 4 o'clock in the morning before high school, and I still played volleyball afterwards. So, work, it doesn't just come to you, and it will not come to you. Go out and work, and you meet people when you work, even if it is only a minimum wage job. That is what I'm seeing, is that they're saying, if I can't make this dollar amount, I'm just going to stay home. I'm not going to work. Go out and work, because you meet people. Get a mentor. And I do agree that people in the millennials and generation, is it Z, they do get picked on, because I see some amazing kids that are out there hustling and grinding, and they're phenomenal. But then I see all of those that are looking at everybody on vacation and, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. She's getting Botox at 22. It's like they're just too wrapped up in everyone's life. If you could just cut out everyone's life and live your own.
What they need is an example, right? Social media is not an example to emulate for your life cycle. So a mentor, an example, somebody that's done and you could aspire to be. It's like, wow, if I can be their age and live like they live and be as happy as they are, reverse engineer.
Yeah.
Do what they did to get there. And that's that sacrifice that people aren't willing to do. If you ask somebody, hey, how bad do you want it? They'll say, oh, whatever it takes. I'll do whatever it takes. No, they won't. You're not willing to do whatever it takes. I mean, when she mentioned the 7-Eleven job, we were pregnant and going to have a baby, and I didn't have health insurance. 7-Eleven offered 100% medical and dental with no deductible in order to encourage people to work at 7-Eleven. So that was 18 months of my life.
Whatever it
to
takes.
Make sure that she was healthy, and zero out of pocket. And we couldn't have afforded it. If we would have had one hiccup during that pregnancy, it would have set us back years.
Yeah.
So
something you said in there, I just want to comment on. I remember when I was young and starting this investment game, I really didn't have any kind of concept or mental construct around how long life is. When I was 20 or 22 and I started making decent money, the lure of doubling that money in 30 days or 60 days is big. And I remember making investments on currency, Forex trading. I remember making investments on, in 2001 when the tech stocks were going, putting investments, I was a big time shareholder in AOL, which worked out great for me. It was one of my best financial decisions. And so I thought that the game had to be won quickly. And so going back to that patience thing, going back to that delayed gratification thing, Lynn, the game is so long. It's so long. Just put the money somewhere where it's going to grow. You don't have to hit a home run. Just get on base and wait and be patient. And in 10 years, you're going to look back and go, holy crap, I'm on third base. And in 20 years, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, I'm about to get to home plate. And, you know, it's a long, long runway. So I think that's a beautiful way to tie this whole thing together. And in closing, team, because we're at time, but I know both of you are extremely literate when it comes to real estate and seminars and doing it, life experiences and reading books. So if someone is new to real estate investing or investments overall, or contemplating it, share with us a book, a favorite book, or a mentor. You talked about mentors, Jeff, someone that, you know, even if they're not alive, they could go look up YouTube videos. What little bit of wisdom or mentorship would you give somebody in that direction?
Well, when it comes to books, we agree on our top two. Yeah. So it's The Richest Man in Babylon and The Millionaire Next Door.
Awesome.
They've always been our top two. The lessons in there for investing and kind of the theme we've been talking about today, delayed gratification, or, you know, the opposite of it is showmanship and trying to keep up with the Joneses. Those are two great books. In fact, we like them so much that our kids' friends got those as graduation presents when they graduated from high school. I don't know that they appreciated that as much as we did.
That was a passion we had, was if we could teach kids in high school to think outside of the box and start thinking about real estate investing.
Get them while
when
they're
young.
Get them while they're young.
But you know what? They were so disappointed with those books. They really were. And those were the best gifts I could give them.
Yeah, well,
maybe they're on a shelf somewhere and they'll pick it up.
There's millions of dollars in those pages.
Yeah.
People just don't see them. They see words. And I will tell you that those are two of the founding books for me as well. And I don't know that I ever needed to read another financial book besides Richest Man in Babylon, and then Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad for me. I mean, if I just everything else helps, but those two, friends, will get you so much clarity, and it's an infinite amount of wisdom there for $8.
Let me mention one more, because I think we're talking about lifestyle, we're talking about passion and purpose and this and that. So your personal development is as important as your financial development. So one that I love when I read it, it's called Solve for Happy. If you haven't read Solve for Happy, you've got to look it up. Mo Gaudat, he lost his son and he was an engineer, and he went on this journey to solve the equation as an engineer, right? There's got to be an equation for happiness. But what he found out is there isn't an equation or a formula to become happy. We all are born happy. And then we add shit to our lives that needs to be cleared away so we can go back to our natural state. We look at our little grandbabies and they beam. Little Cora, she smiles with her whole face. She uses all her muscles. She's just the happiest kid alive. And I want to preserve that. So our natural state is to be happy. And if you're not happy and you have things that are distracting you, it's really hard to focus on financial success, right? So you got to take care of yourself first. Internally, you've got to be in the right mindset to pursue your dreams, or you're going to be in the wrong mindset and think your dreams aren't worth pursuing. So personal development along with the financial development and those other books we talked about, I think is a blend that has to be pursued.
And I would say to those that are the younger generation that is really important. If you're watching Instagram and you're feeling like you're not enough because of what you're seeing on Instagram or on Facebook, that's not making you happy. You need to find the things that make you happy.
Yep.
Yeah. Want less. Want less. Well, I'm going to close this out, friends, and this was a total blast, but there's a quote by Jim Rohn that I think dovetails nicely with what you were saying. And he says, happiness isn't something that you pursue. It's like a butterfly. You can't catch it. Excuse me. I'm going to say that over. It's not happiness. I'm sorry. It is success is not something that you pursue. It's like a butterfly. You can't catch it. Success is something you attract by the person that you become. And I think that very much dovetails into the book that you mentioned, Solve for Happy. So I'm going to go out and get that right away. Super grateful for you too. I know that we're kindred spirits because our just cause is to help spread financial literacy and help people attain a successful financial future. So thanks for joining the show. It's been a blast.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank
We love
you.
you, man.
Thanks for listening to the Infinite Financial Freedom Podcast. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcast and Spotify to be notified of all future episodes, and follow us on social media to join in on the conversation. If you'd like to learn more about Neo Home Loans and how we empower homebuyers with financial literacy and guide you on your journey to financial freedom, visit neohomeloans.com.